911 operators of Reddit. What are some of the funniest things someone was called in for? When I was a fire dispatcher, I had to send a squad to remove a cock ring. So there's that. I once called 911 because I cut my finger and wanted to talk to my mum, who was a dispatcher. I called crying, asking to talk to her by name. She was more pissed at my dad for not waking up when I tried to go to him first. Numerous calls where someone has handcuffed himself to a sofa during coitus and lost the key. If it's not busy, this seems to draw most available officers. Not me, but a coworker. A person was pleasuring themselves with the handle of a scissors, and it got stuck. Was a 911 operator before becoming a paramedic. Had a lot of funny ones. But by far my favourite involved an all-too-common problem of a kid getting a hold of a locked cell phone and only being able to dial 911. It was Father's Day, mind you. Had this particular kid, about 5 years old, call in at least 6 times, but he'd never stay on the line long enough for us to get a good ping on his cell phone. It was probably about 2200 local at the time. Not early, but not too late in the night. Long story short, we were finally able to get him to stay on the phone long enough by talking about how his teddy bear was sick. We asked to speak to his parents, and he told us they were in bed and the door was locked. So we asked him to go knock on the door. He then told us he had been locked in his room. Okay, I think we know what is going on now. By this point, we had an officer en route to this kid's house to go make sure everything was okay and to tell his parents the kid has been calling 911. The officer arrives on scene. A few minutes go by. Then the officer comes over the radio and says Son 120 back in service. The teddy bear is 10-4. The officer made his way up to the comm centre and proceeded to tell us all that the kid's dad answered the door wearing only boxer shorts and was more than a little agitated when he found out his son had been calling 911. Apparently the dad had been getting his Father's Day gift from Mum when the officer showed up. I don't know if this counts as funny. I'm from a small town. Everyone knows everyone. My Uncle Jim is a cop. All the dispatchers and first responders know my grandma pretty well. One day, my uncle was working on something electrical in the basement. He was shocked. He was unconscious, but he ended up being fine. My grandma called 911 and screamed into the phone. V, it's Kate. Jimmy's been shot. What V, the dispatcher, heard was Jimmy's been shot. Every single police officer, sheriff, deputy, chemist, paramedic, firefighter, and park ranger in town arrived at my grandma's house. My uncle was super confused and embarrassed. My sister once called because she wanted to know who would be on the other end of the line. I couldn't hear what the person said, but I heard my sister's parts of the convo. Sister, hello, who's this? Or she hung on the operator. They ended up calling back, and my dad picked up and had to explain that his daughter was just being curious. Actual 911 operator here. So far the silliest was a guy who called, all concerned about the number of birds flying around because there was an air show nearby, and he was worried the planes would hit the birds. A man requiring extrication from an Under Armour insulated shirt. His shoulder popped out of the socket while he was pulling it on it. It was halfway on / halfway off, and his arm was locked and dislocated. Edited to add, so you don't think I'm awful. He was laughing and said I would have driven myself to the hospital, but I would have had to drive with my arm out the window. I was a 911 dispatcher years ago, but had 2 calls, specific calls, that still make me laugh. One, a frazzled mother called cause her 6-year-old had gotten into the roof and she couldn't get him down. She kept screaming about how we need to hurry ... not because she was worried he would get hurt, but because he had done that before, and last time he peed in the events. 2, this was before weed was legal in my state, but a college kid called asking for an ambulance. He was super worried that he was having an allergic reaction to the weed he just smoked. When asked about his symptoms, he said, I just can't stop eating Cheetos. Not me, but my wife, who works both as a secretary for a fire department and is a volunteer firefighter slashing. A lady calls asking if she can donate a building for a training burn-in. After asking questions, she finds out it's not a building but more question. It's not her own. It was abandoned on her property. Just a few more questions. It's not exactly abandoned. It's her ex-husband's, and he's living in it and won't leave. She wants my wife's fire department to burn it down. Wife